Manufacturers like to make cars, and they like to make money. And they make more money by making cars that fill all kinds of needs. Sometimes needs you didn't even know you had, like the BMW X6, which is a big sporty SUV coupe. Even more confusing than that is manufacturers who make more than one car to fill the same need. This is the Hyundai Accent hatch, a car that quite happily competes with a bunch of other mid-priced hatches, including ones from Hyundai themselves. The company that makes the i30 now also makes another option for those who want a Korean hatchback, although I'm struggling to understand why. Hyundai's PR blast says this car fits in between the i20 and the i30, which it does, physically speaking. Bigger than an i20, smaller than an i30, which also has some more premium features like cruise control and climate control. Besides that, the differences between the i30 and this car amount to not much else. Even differences in the measurements are so tiny it's hardly worth mentioning. The i30 has 0.5 millimeter more front legroom and not much more in the rear. My point to all of this is that for 2 extra interior features and the combined total of 2 centimeters extra legroom, Hyundai want you to pay 15,000 Rand more for the i30. I get that giving your customers choice is a good thing, but 2 centimeters more space? You might argue, surely they look very different. But they don't. The front end is slightly less interesting and the rear has got some old school 1 Series elements to it, but there's nothing that makes this car particularly better or worse looking than an i30. If anything, it's probably the more sensible choice. Then again, saving 15 grand is quite a sensible thing to do. And speaking of saving money, my very non-business brain says that surely it would have been better to reserve all that R&D cash that was splurged on developing this car for something else. Anything else, besides producing a virtual clone of a model that they already produce. The biggest differentiator is this interior, where you can see they've saved money with a less luxurious layout. It's still well put together, although slightly more entry-level, minus those extra features I mentioned earlier. But it also throws up a bit more confusion, because in the Hyundai i20 you can get cruise control, which isn't available for this car. I give up. Let's just stick to the facts. The Accent hatch interior makes do with manual aircon and cloth seats, but one of its most impressive features is the space. Despite having a roofline with a fair slope to it, the rear headroom is good and the legroom is more than adequate. Boot space is good enough for a fair luggage load as well. There is only one engine choice for the Accent hatch, and it's a 1.6-litre petrol with 91 kilowatts and 156 newton meters. It's a decent engine for most driving conditions, but what makes it really enjoyable is the 6-speed manual gearbox, so it's got a really nice shift action. Made even better by the fact, when you consider what your options are, a 4-speed automatic. In fairness, I haven't driven the auto version, but anything with only 4 speeds sounds a bit prehistoric. The ratios in the manual are well suited to city and highway driving, so I can't imagine that a 4-speed box with the same engine would be as good. It might have a look that's less interesting and an interior that's built for comfort rather than pure luxury, but this car really doesn't mind being driven. It'll even handle with a bit of intent, and that's made more enjoyable by that gearbox I was talking about. So you can actually have a bit of fun in here. Well, as much fun as a 1600 in the city will allow you. Another reason to choose the manual over the auto? Better figures. The less important 0 to 100 time is a second quicker in the manual, but the CO2 count and the fuel consumption are also better, with Hyundai claiming this version is almost half a litre better per 100 kilometers than the auto. I've spent a bit longer with the Accent hatch than I normally do with test cars, and I still haven't figured out why Hyundai have built it. Probably never will. But even though it's more dowdy than its i30 cousin, it's well put together and it's enjoyable. And given the choice, I'd save myself 15 grand and go for this car. Actually, bugger it, I'd buy the i30. The only engine choice for the Accent hatch is the 1.6-litre petrol, which has enough power for most situations. We choose the manual over the auto box though. This car slots in just below the i30, although the differences between the two don't amount to much at all. As good a package as the Accent hatch is, the i30 is worth the extra money.